Oh, I heard a tink.
Hangout on Air is live.
We are
It's
live.
called a hangout.
Mike stole my thunder. I've been wanting to say that for like
I'm sorry, man.
months.
We're not live though. We're not streaming.
Okay, Trent's texting his bowels off right here.
I'm
already bored.
Okay,
Trent's really taking this
yeah.
seriously.
Trent's
He
Trent's
cares.
Trent's ADD kicked in 30 seconds.
Oh, we're live.
Okay, can you see us?
No.
I see a big black screen.
Whoa, sir.
Yeah, I'm sorry to make it racial.
Oh, we are live, guys. For God's sakes.
Should we go on a McKinney rant next, or is that?
No.
No, we're gonna say that one for later.
Yeah, we're gonna save that one for later. This is our first live broadcast. It's pretty cool. So we have 5 or 6 people here.
Hey, there we are.
It's kind of
have
neat.
tacos?
We have tacos. We have beers.
We have water.
Tacos. Yes, beers.
Trent,
Trent.
the crowd of millions actually.
Yeah, this is actually cool. Though.
We have a cooler.
Stearns is here. The bike mechanic that kills all bike mechanics. He can not only can he fix a bike, but he can ride the hell out of one too. All right, so we're having a good time. So Trent Nix, this man here, is a friend. We've talked many times about him on the podcast.
We have.
He also, in my opinion, happens to be one of the best bike fitters on the planet.
In the universe.
Here in
not-
DFW, he's kind of the tallest midget, really, if you think about it. But that's,
Yeah, well,
That's not true. There's tons of
what's funny?
cyclists. in
What's
the
funny
DFW.
about that is Trent actually said that today. Isn't that what you said?
Something like that.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to hand it over to Mike. Mike, we're going to talk what? Buying a bike, bike fit.
Yeah. So we got a couple different topics, and the reason we had Trent on is because yes, he is actually really good at this stuff, and he's one of the best trained in the area, certainly. But the biggest thing is he's good at explaining it. In fact,
Oh, there we
he likes
are.
to explain things. It's kind of his bit. But we're going to talk about his training, and then some of the cooler stuff he's done as far as bike fits, his wind tunnels and things of that nature. And then we're going to kind of go through the process of buying a bike fits itself, and then we're going to talk about what's good about buying bikes, what are good things to look at when buying bikes, and obviously we'll talk about super bikes simply because so many people buy super bikes and then they're fit on them horribly when the point of it is aerodynamics and they sit on it like it's a road bike. So,
So you gonna tell me why my shoulder hurts?
it's probably
Yeah.
because you're on a Contonaroo. That's the biggest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
Too small for you when you bought it in the first place. That's neither here nor there. So,
Randy, Randy, it's okay.
Listen, there's something going on in the background that you guys have no idea about, and it's gonna be unveiled.
Oh,
What's that?
I'm not telling you.
he's buying a super bike.
You're unveiling it at some point. So, all right. So we're going to shut up now. Trent,
Tell us about Trent. Tell us about bike fitting. How you got into bike fitting? What's your deal? What's your
started in 1976.
That's pretty much how that goes.
Close to the mic.
Please.
Closer to the mic so you can hear me. So
That's
I started
good.
Bike fitting really about the time that TriShop opened, and what got me interested in bike fit was what I tell people. I had some bad ones, and I had some bad ones that hurt me. I had some bad ones that impacted my performance, and I was convinced by the people that gave me those bike fits that those were great bike fits. And then I actually took my bike, drove all the way to Boulder, Colorado, went to Retool, had Ivan O'Gorman at Retool fit me, and the changes that he made to my bike were not only drastically different than what I had previously been put on, but they were also much more comfortable, and I was able to perform much better. From there, I decided that I really wanted to learn how to bike fit, so I found who I thought were the smartest minds in bike fit. Guys like Dan Infield at Slow Twitch, Matt Steinmetz at Retool, the rest of the Retool crew, Ivan that I mentioned earlier, and several others, John Cobb, etc. And I really wanted to learn what it was about bike fit that made those guys really good, and I wanted to learn what they knew so that I could stand on their shoulders, so to speak.
So tell me about your history as far as you cycling, and how did you get into cycling? What's kind of give us your background like that?
So I actually did some mountain biking in high school and college. Somebody relieved me of ownership of my bike when I was in college.
Randy, that means it was stolen.
It was
I
stolen.
got it.
It
Yeah.
was stolen. Even
Thanks.
though Aggies don't like cheaters, still tolerate those that do.
Oh,
They
dear.
were T-sips that
Apparently,
came
there
in
was a
from Austin.
T-sip
Yeah,
on campus,
yeah.
and
We all
that's
know
how that went. So I Didn't ride for a long time. Had gained a lot of weight, which I've since done since I don't TriShop. But I started cycling, and I actually started cycling with Raul. And I went to a shop that's not in existence anymore. Bought a bike, and it was one of those. Well, this is probably your size, right around the parking lot. How does it feel? I didn't know how it should feel, so of course it felt great because that was the right answer. Bought the bike, and I remember the first time I took it to, let's just say, a shop that's fairly decent. They couldn't believe that I had been riding centuries like that, and some of the discomfort that I was having, they said, was related to it. They made some changes, but ultimately told me that $1,000, which was huge money for me then, certainly for a bicycle, was had been wasted effectively on a bike that didn't fit me. So of course that means it's time to upgrade to a tri bike. So I consulted all the experts that I knew, and they made a lot of recommendations based on brand or shop and so on. And I went and bought a bike and spent $3,000 this time. And sure enough, did an Ironman on it, had some success on it in terms of meeting some goals, but I didn't ever feel really good on it. I didn't really know I knew that I needed to be an aero because it was faster, but at the same time, I wanted to push power, and nobody was really providing me that info. And in the end, that's the bike that I took up to Boulder and found out that no, it was also definitely a size small, too long geometrically, and had been set up very poorly. And when you spend a lot of money and a lot of time, that becomes really, really frustrating. And it was that frustration that really inspired me to go out and learn about bike fit. And even then, it takes time, it gets experience to see a lot of different riders, see a lot of different issues, and over time, I've been able to do that and at least have gotten the respect of some of these guys that I consider really, really great fitters, the guys that were figuring all this out. I didn't have to go through a lot of work to figure out what's right and what's not because those guys that I mentioned were all forerunners to establish an orthodoxy of bike fit. But one of the things about bike fit that really frustrates me and that frustrates others, when I mention orthodoxy, it assumes that there's a right way to do something. When you go and you swim, a swim coach is never going to say, let me see what your natural swim stroke is there and we'll see what works best for you. Now they're going to watch you swim and they're going to say, this is wrong, this is right. When you watch basketball players, there's a certain way that's emerged. Nobody shoots a two-handed set shot anymore. Nobody shoots a granny shot at a free throw anymore. Everybody shoots in a very similar fashion.
I won a free throw contest with granny style.
And
by the
Rick
way.
Barry shot a lot of them. And
29 in a row, 5th grade.
It's impressive.
Look it up.
Did a pretty good
Look it
job
up.
of that too. But over time, a right way to do those things has emerged. And the truth is, only in bike fit and only really in bike buying do you see people that try to justify doing extremely unique things as if that's value being provided. And I'm a big believer that there is a right way to do it, and there's a range of right, but it's somewhere close to that orthodoxy, and that you should be pushed towards right as opposed to justified as being away from right. Sure, if you've got a giant rod up your spine or some unique physiological condition that puts you as an extreme outlier, you should be riding differently than other people. But that's really, really rare. So that was what kind of got me into bike fit and the philosophy that I take.
So out of the manufacturers out there, I mean, do you see that the meaty part of their bike lineup fits most people, or is it pretty restrictive?
It's very different from what it was 4 years ago. 4 years ago, for example, our primary, when we first opened, our primary triathlon bikes were Orbea and Scott. And the truth is that the Orbea is the difference between the smallest bike and the largest bike was about an inch in size. But the difference between the smallest Scott and the largest Scott was about 2.5 inches, talking about it stacked. So the
Right.
vertical distance from the center of the bottom bracket of the head tube top. We looked at other brands and saw that, our Scott 56 was actually taller than a Cervelo P2 and a 58 or a P3 and a 58, but it was narrower than a Cervelo P3 and a 54. The difference between then and now, though, is pretty stark. When you look at a medium in the major brands, so the brands we carry, add in the Trek Specialized, Cervelo, there's a lot more movement towards an orthodox way of saying that this fits and this doesn't. There are still differences between them, and we'll talk about superbikes here in a little bit because that's a completely different world altogether. But you're starting to see some convergence. There are still a few outliers out there, but even then, I mean, back in 2010, Cervelo was telling everybody that our geometries are right because it's faster, you're more aggressive. We're building it for people that want to be fast. Well, if their geometries were perfect, why did they change it with a V5? And it's because the way that we fit bikes now is really even different than it was 5 years ago.
Well, and I think it's important, we were talking about your training and like what you've done as far as certifications and whatnot. And you kind of touched on that going to see Infield and Fists and Retool and all those guys. But I think that's the other part is, there's a lot of people that are very into, we don't really care about the rules of fitting. We just want to put you on this bike that we're trying to sell. And we can make you fit on any bike. We can move the seat back, move the seat forward. We can do all these things. And I think that's one of the other parts that we wanted to kind of get across. We talked about it a little bit on the podcast before, but that's one of the big, frustrations for a coach, because we see you guys get on a bike and you're so happy you got this great deal on this bike that we can look at you and go, that your knee is in your chest and your arms are way out in front of you. This doesn't look good. Well, I've got a little shoulder pain, a little neck pain, and just a little back pain, but otherwise it's great. I love this bike.
I got a slip disc.
Yeah, my coccyx is sticking up the back, but otherwise I'm fine. So that's one of the things we were talking about. Talk about the training aspect of it. Like, where did you kind of learn what you do, but also fine tune it?
Well, when you talk about bike fit, you've got three different components. You've got the bike and how it's built. You've got the person and how they're built, and then you have the person and how they prefer to ride. And there are certain things that certainly some riders can prefer. Certain things are comfortable and certain things are not, and so on and so forth. Kind of what your question is huge, and we'll try to address, and I'm sure we will address each of those items individually. But what I found, I went to two primary schools, I guess I'd say, the Slow Twitch school, and I've been to their Road and Try and also their advanced certification, which I don't think they even do anymore. There's not many of us around that did that, but it was a really cool experience. And then I also went to Retool. Slow Twitch was very focused on what I would say is kind of how riders ride and how manufacturers make bikes, whereas Retool was a little more tuned to how the body moves. Those guys, Todd Carver came out of the Boulder Institute of Sports Medicine, so he was very in tune with how riders rode on a bike, especially a road bike, and he worked with a lot of elite athletes. But what I found when I went and kind of saw the two different approaches to things is they had different approaches to how they carried someone through a bike fit. But in the end, the result was actually very, very similar. And that's an example of orthodoxy emerging. You may even have different justifications for why, but if in the end the same thing emerges and the rider's getting the same benefit, irrespective of why you justify that position, then there becomes a right way to do it. And one of the things that we also found when it came to triathlon bike fit, and I speak triathlon and road as being a little separate, but triathlon bike fit especially, I still don't think we've got everything figured out. When you look at triathletes now, they do all look like they went to the same guy to get fit, even though they didn't. 10 years ago, they were all over the map. You also used to see a big difference between a time trial cyclist and a triathlete. But now, I was watching the tour just a couple of weeks ago, and all the riders looked like they were fit by me, in that they looked like they were thinking in terms of triathlon.
You did fit most of them, though, right? You went
Right.
to France for
no tour riders yet, but one of these days I'll get one. One of these days I'll get one. And I fit a few guys that are riding TT and riding TT at a high level, a pro or expert or Cat 1 level. And in those cases, they do have certain rules that the UCI provides about how the bike should be set up. But you're also finding that with the saddles that we have available now, it's easier to kind of hack that position without having to violate those UCI rules. But in the end, this orthodoxy has emerged, and you don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure out that if you'll just look at yourself on the bike, and nobody ever does this, and I don't understand why. The few riders that I've had come into me that spend a lot of time in front of a mirror or with a camera set up or with wife or husband or whoever taking pictures of them actually do a decent job of putting themselves in a position that's usually superior to what the shop did that set them up. And they're just simply judging by, well, I saw this person and this is what they looked like, and I saw this person, this is what they looked like, and then I saw myself and I looked nothing like that. And in this, the case that I'm mentioning, the guy was, tall, lean. He had the physiology of an elite athlete. Certainly, if you've got somebody with a different physiology, let's just say it's, different types of leg lengths or, carrying a little extra weight, all these things do impact the position you can ride in and ride in effectively. But even then, one of the things in one of the presentations I do, I've got a rider who is, I guess the best way to describe him, he's a real muscled up guy. He's built like a trash can full of rocks. And the position that he's in,
That's a great visual right there.
but the thing is he's not fat. It's not like this is a guy that's carrying a lot of weight or anything. And the position that he's in, if you actually look at him, it looks identical. I mean, I'm sorry, it looks very, very different actually from the position of an elite professional rider. But when I take away that person's torso and I take away kind of the trunk of their body from their hip down to their feet, it looks exactly the same. From their shoulders down to the pads, it looks exactly the same. They just needed more clearance to deal with their overall body shape and overall body position. So, when I think in terms of how fit has changed and how the manufacturers have even changed to support it, manufacturers seem to me to be about 5 years behind a lot of the stuff that Dan was publishing, Dan Enfield was publishing back in 2010. But because he's gained so much attention, he's had a huge impact in how manufacturers are building bikes. And you have a lot of manufacturers. He just did an article today where he talks about a manufacturer building their bikes to the geometries that he prescribes, or at least using his philosophy. And that's a huge difference from the old days where the manufacturers were telling us all, this is how God intends for you to ride your bike. And we're seeing kind of the people take control of it.
Avid cyclist, he's a big fan of cycling.
He is. He definitely rides with a forward seat post as well.
Yeah. You didn't know that?
So
It's the Christian God, not the Jewish God.
what the hell is wrong
Wait
with
a
you?
minute, they're the same.
Oh, Randy. I do have a question, Trent. So what is the most common fit issues you see from bikes that come in here that either didn't get fit by you, or people go out and buy them on Craigslist because it's a great bike for a decent price? What are some of the more common things you see that people should sort of look out for and not make the same mistakes?
That's honestly something that you might get different answers from me on different days depending on what I've seen most recently. Most of the time, people come in, their saddle's too low, and they are sitting in a way too slack seat post position, saddle position. What that means is it's too far back away from the arm pads. The arm pads aren't really where we determine whether you're forward or back. It's what you're pedaling around, the bottom bracket.
Right.
Usually that's actually related to the saddle they're on, not the position of the seat. There are a lot of seats that I can't get forward enough. So we'll have people that come in and they're totally fine on their seat. They feel great, but they've got neck and shoulder issues. And their neck and shoulder issues are because they're too stretched out. And the only way to fix that has nothing to do with moving the arm pads. It's actually about moving them forward. So we'll have to change the seat to fix neck and shoulder issues. It doesn't make a lot of sense to the person that doesn't understand. You sit in a different spot on different saddles, but it's something we see pretty frequently. When it comes to, let's say, somebody that buys a used bike, typically they're buying a bike that has an older geometry, that they're judging whether that thing fits me by whether or not I'm the same size as the guy that I bought it from. And I've seen people with 2 and 3 inch differences in inseams that have the same height. And even then, they're assuming that the shop that sold that first guy the bike sold him the right bike for what he needs.
Right.
Which also is almost never the case. I think that that's something that's going to get better over time. And as you see manufacturers can converge on geometries that are a little closer together, it becomes a little bit easier. But even then, based on the position that I fit you in, you can be up 4 centimeters, or you can be completely down onto the head tube, and that's the difference between two sizes in some cases. Especially in the smaller sizes. So a lot of what I would say are missized bikes. But even then, you can be on the wrong size bike and be set up incorrectly, and you can be on the right size bike and be set up incorrectly. So it's the convergence of what position should you be in, and have we filled up all the space underneath you with bicycle, not spacers, stems, all the things that aren't engineered to make you go fast and certainly aren't aesthetically appealing either.
Okay. So this takes me to a question. It's one that I think Randy's been dealing with. For example, when I still had the Trek, I came in here, I bought it somewhere else. We actually found that it fit okay.
Mm-hmm.
We made a bunch of adjustments to it, but the final project we had was around my shoulder issues and getting the pads out wide enough for me to ride in a comfortable position. So you adjusted my seat up and down, or my stem height was right, but we had to find pads that would go out, that would go out wide enough. So my point here is, as even after a good bike fit, after somebody looking at it, you then have to listen to your body, right? And take it back to that bike fitter and say, still feeling this, help me solve for this.
So you actually are bringing up 3 points. Number one, most commonly the reason that people come in for a bike fit is because they hurt. And that's what a bike fitter is for, to make it stop hurting. And certainly there's a lot of truth to that, and that's an easy thing. If you can make somebody stop hurting, they immediately see great value in the experience they had, and sometimes you're saving them a lot of money and a lot of trips to physicians and so on. But ultimately, if you've got an injury of some sort and we can neutralize your bike fit, we can first figure out whether or not you're hurting because it's you or whether you're hurting because of your bike fit. Second thing is I would caution people that that's actually not the primary reason to go get a bike fit. The primary reason to get a bike fit is to go fast. It turns out that comfort is one of the reasons why you would not be able to go fast. If you can't sustain the aero position, it doesn't really matter how aero it is when you're down there. If you can't sustain it, every second that you're not in aero, it is costing you time. And that time that's cost, for whatever reason, is something that we have to fix if we want you to go faster. So when I tell people I'm not really worried about their power output, I'm not really worried about certain things, I'm worried about them going fast. I go, no, I prefer comfort over speed. And I don't think of those two things as being separate from each other. But then, kind of the last thing that you mentioned there is okay, in your case, when it comes to bike size, how tall are you?
6'5".
Okay, so it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that you need the biggest tri bike you can get.
Right.
So you finding the right size is no great mystery. And any shop should be able to do that. If somebody were to bring out a medium, you would know, even if you couldn't spell bicycle, that's not for you. All right, so that's one.
We should
you faster because it's lighter.
We should put me on a medium and take a picture. That'd be kind
like
of funny.
Bear on a tricycle.
Thanks, Trent.
It would. I'll drop a name. It'll be like Harold Wilson on his old bike.
Oh.
Hope Harold's listening.
I hope he is too.
He will.
No, he even told me after he looked at it, he goes, "Yeah, I need a new bike." So, and he did.
He rode that bike for years too.
He did. He rode that bike for years, and Harold is more in tune with how his body works than all of us put together. He's a really, really bright guy that really understands physiology, but he's a guy that didn't necessarily understand how that related to bike fit. But he knew whether certain movements were causing issues much better than even as a bike fitter I'll ever be able to know, because smart guy.
I think
because he's so in tune with his body and knows physiology so well, he was probably able to incorporate strength training things that help compensate for a bike fit that wasn't ideal for him, right?
Well, Harold was lucky in that he's one of those guys that, strong athletes. Lance Armstrong can ride a tricycle faster than I'll ever be able to ride a tri-bike. This is not impressive that he can go fast in a bad position or whatever. And even then, Harold's a pretty tough guy. He doesn't, he's not somebody that whines about pain and discomfort. He's not somebody that feels a lot of pain and discomfort when he's in a triathlon position. He's a guy that came in and had no complaints. So we made some changes. He goes, "Oh, that feels much better."
Yeah.
But he didn't say that things felt bad to start with. So Harold may be a guy that can ride in 10 different positions and have some level of success and never have any significant pain discomfort. And he also probably has a pretty good understanding of generally where he needs to be positionally. But back to your issues, Dave is, big, broad-shouldered guy. I think as I told you before,
Josh came full of rocks.
There's a little jello in there.
Thank you.
But now Dave is.
Thanks for teeing him up, Mike.
As a softball, I had to take a swing. Yeah.
Oh yes, he did.
Jello.
Hey, I can throw rocks at myself better than anybody. But I think I told Dave, you can get a tapeworm and anorexia, and you're still going to be a broad-shouldered guy.
Truth.
And as a consequence, being
Can-
able to
Totally do that, by the way.
Can you catch anorexia? Because I'm looking to, if like chicken pox, when you're a kid and you just get in the same room.
You have to just rub up against someone with anorexia.
I think so. I think it's airborne.
Jokes about that.
Yeah.
No.
I'm just.
People are looking at the live stream and going, "You boys all could use a catch of that."
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was anorexic, but I beat the hell out of it.
It's a bunch of linemen talking about tri bikes.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So they're not oblivious to the irony there.
Listen,
But,
I've lost like 25 pounds. I'm
Hey, don't break your arm, patting yourself on the back.
Svelte.
I found them.
I'm ready.
I found them. They were still out there. Don't worry. So you're a broad-shouldered guy, and it becomes difficult for a lot of people to hold a narrow arm pad position.
Yeah.
And one of the things that you'll see with a lot of bikes, the way that they're even specced from vendors, is there's not a lot of adjustment in the arm pads. And in your case, you were a guy that was in a position that was orthodox, but you were still struggling with neck and shoulder discomfort. So we put on a set of bars that provided a larger range of adjustability and specifically rotational adjustability. And
Yeah.
for whatever reason, the rotator cuff's a very complicated set of muscles. For whatever reason, we found a spot that you were able to relax and let go. And little bitty subtle things like that are something they don't even teach you in bike fit school. And I've asked about it, and I'll give you the exact quote. I asked John Cobb. I said, one of the things in my arsenal is adjusting arm pads and adjusting, the pitch of the arm pads, adjusting rotation of the arm pads, width, and so on. He goes, I said, when are we going to cover these things? And his response was, Trent, we're just trying to get people to set the saddle height right. And John's way, he's very succinct, and he's also very he's able to communicate a lot in very few words, and I could kind of understand. But that's something that we do is you can try, and it's very difficult to predict, but we try a lot of different positions with 2 of your 5 contact points, your elbows, to know for sure what's going to be more appropriate for you to hold a somewhat aggressive position, but in a way that you can do so for the entirety of your race. And even then, there's Ironman versus sprint. I had a guy come in. He's a collegiate athlete. He wants to do top 10 at collegiate nationals. He's got to ride for an hour.
Right.
His
Not
comfort,
6.
Not 6. His comfort really wasn't high on my list. His performance was high on my list.
Got it.
He's told me that's what he was looking for. So if he were to call me and say, man, at 3 hours, my shoulders really start hurting, I would say, why do I care about this? Because that's not in sync with your goals. At the same time, I do see a lot of athletes that will come in, they're sprint Olympic athletes, and they'll tell me things like, I'm more concerned about performance than anything else. And the truth is, what they really want to do is ride with their friends on long rides and feel comfortable doing so. And you really find that out when they say, oh, I start hurting at 3 hours, but I only do sprints. And then you kind of have to, as a fitter, figure out, well, what's going to be most appropriate for this person? I'm going to cost them some watts, putting them in a position that is maybe suboptimal for performance, but they're not going to call me back and complain on their long Saturday ride that things don't feel terrific.
Yeah. You know what I'd ask him? Who's your coach that's giving you a 3-hour workout if you're a sprint Olympic distance athlete?
Well, you still got to work on the engine.
Oh yeah, sorry, Mike.
You need to work on the engine
For
up to about an hour.
3 hours, yes.
Yeah,
To each
because that's
their
all
own,
you do.
though.
That's what you do. You just do hour sprints if you're an Olympic athlete. Come
Yeah.
on.
Hey, that's not my expertise.
Yeah.
I fit the
Well,
bike and do
so
my best.
here's the question, and this kind of comes back to that. So when Matt Steinmetz was here talking, he was saying, look, we're going to put you in a position that is best for your performance based on goals, power, aerodynamics, etc. But one of the things he said was, you don't necessarily have to be comfortable immediately. It's something that takes time. This is not, you don't get set up and go, okay, you're perfect. Everything's going to be comfortable. You're going to be fast. You're going to be perfect. Everything is perfect.
Yeah, it's like getting used to an Adamo seat, man.
Yeah.
That thing was like a stick up my.
Well, that's different. But that's a point. Like, it doesn't mean you're immediately going to be, everything's perfect. It should be in a good position. It shouldn't be so painful you can't stand it because it doesn't make a difference in that case, I assume. But it should be okay to take a little time to get used to it. It's not just.
It depends. I can remember it's been a couple of years since she bought the bike, but I had a girl that bought a Guru. We put her in an aggressive position. She's fit and thin and, can ride well. And she'd never ridden an aero before. And her first ride was 60 miles, an aero the whole time. She felt great.
Right.
And was that great fitter or was that lucky athlete? More often the lucky athlete than anything else. And I definitely communicate that. But Matt has the luxury of being Matt Steinmetz. He can tell you what you're feeling isn't real, and you'll believe him because he's Matt Steinmetz.
That's a good point.
I am a retailer who thinks I can fit okay, but most people, when they walk out, expect to feel better. And I do my best to both warn them as to what's going to take some time, and I also try my best to make sure that they get a lot of value immediately after the experience. Some great success, others, they come back and we take a look and see what's going on. I tell people whenever I fit them that if they have any problems, their fit's guaranteed. And if they have any problems and they don't tell me, that's on them.
Right.
And sometimes they can send me an email and say something, and their response is, you need to suck it up. Sometimes the response is, well, maybe you should try this. And sometimes the response is, come in, let's take a look, and we'll figure out what's going on. And, especially when it comes to saddle discomfort, people that say, well, my saddle hurts. There's some people that can sit on a cactus. There's some people that can't sit on a puff of air for whatever reason, And, you do as much as you can to understand and work with someone. But at the same time, when somebody says their saddle hurts, their saddle actually doesn't cry out in pain at all. But what you're touching the saddle with is a pretty serious part of your body that you're concerned about. And like you mentioned, though, but here, everybody that rides a bike, when they got on a saddle, there was some sort of acclimation. So when you put a new saddle on, they'll tell you, oh, of course, this is going, it's going to take some time.
Yeah.
And so they have some sort of expectation. But when they're paying, and if you take a look at the other fitters in the world that have the credentials that we do, we charge about half of what they do for bike fits. When we charge $199 for a bike fit, though, people expect an immediate result. And we do our best to provide that, but not everybody is as fortunate, that the first ride is demonstrably better. Sometimes it's, hey, I get this, I won't say quite a bit, but occasionally, oh, my saddle really, really hurts. Okay, so we make some changes, and saddle change is not always the only thing that needs to be necessary. If fit change will be necessary. And then they'll go, well, my saddle feels way better, but now my whatever hurts. And I'll tell them, your whatever hurt all along. Your saddle just hurt so bad you never even knew that the other pain existed.
Right.
And so we've done the first step, and now we know more. We can make additional steps if it's necessary.
But that's the other part is it's a process. It's not just like, hey, go get a bike fit. Everything's done. Okay, high five. I mean, there's going to be adjustments.
It's not a silver bullet, right?
Yeah.
Well, partially. I get to see people in a max 2-hour stretch that is the bike fit. And you get two things that happen. Number one, they've done the bike fit, and usually it comes off of a marathon weekend where they rode 12 hours and everything hurts and so on. So it becomes very difficult to know what feels good. Or they haven't ridden in weeks and nothing hurts. And then you take that a step further, people ride differently outside than they do on the trainer. Not always, but I've had riders that they will have issues outside that boggle the mind, and you really find out as you fit them that, well, they're coming way, way, way forward on the saddle and loading up their shoulders in a way that you're not seeing on the trainer. And you actually, in one case, I set a guy up where if you look at him on the trainer and go, he's stretched out. But when you looked at him outside and watched him ride, suddenly he came forward and he put himself into an orthodox position. Other riders, man, they're totally consistent. The way that they ride in front of me is the same way that they ride outside, but it's not always that way.
So have you ever seen an issue where an athlete gets fitter or loses weight and then their fit dramatically changes?
Dramatically changes? No. And maybe everybody has a different perspective on what dramatic means.
Sure.
But the relationship, for example, between where the pedals should be on your feet to where the saddle should be isn't really affected much at all by how fit you are. You're going to be within a range of maybe a centimeter, no matter what changes on you, if I have my way. And that's about it. In a centimeter, you're talking less than a half an inch, so not much.
But Trent, the things like stack height could change, right?
But even then, it's how much is dramatic. If I've got somebody that came in and lost 100 pounds, well, if it was from 300 to 200, it was definitely dramatic because their physiology dramatically changed. If it was 400 to 300, not so much. And so when you consider situations like that, we get within a reasonable facsimile just about for everybody, irrespective of their relative fitness. So losing 25 pounds, yeah, your hip angle is going to be a little more open, but odds are your knees were pushed away from the top tube to create space between your body and between your knees. And now you can just simply hug them a little closer without having obstruction.
Randy just wants to be recognized for losing his 25 pounds.
No, I actually
He
was.
just wants to come and bring his bike in so you can say, look at that, buddy.
No, because I got a bike fit at another location, and it was.
We have one location, so you need another shot.
and I went to a guy that knew a little bit, and it was dramatically different from the time I got my second fit from the time I bought my bike.
I don't think that probably has anything to do with you changing.
Well, you just said two things though. The place you said the time you went and got Bud to fit you.
Yes.
Who's a decent fitter, even Trent would say that.
Absolutely.
To the time you bought the bike.
Yes.
That bike was a fucking nightmare when you bought it.
Whoa. And that's the first F-bomb for the evening.
Internet.
I
No,
know-
seriously.
I know something about it, but the point is that I think that he's making it. I think is correct. Is your position didn't change because you changed, and even how long was it between those fits?
4 or 5 months.
Yeah.
4 or 5 months. You can't change no matter what you do enough to dramatically affect your bike fit. One of the two or both.
Unless I
One of the
become
two
like
fits
an
was
amputee.
inadequate. Right. Unless something changes that's dramatically for the worse. But you odds are one of the setups was inferior, and what you did is move from potentially an inferior fit to a good fit as opposed to a fit changing because you changed.
And while I said that way too colorfully, my apologies.
I think people are really offended, Dave.
I'm positive
Yeah,
they
we just
are.
lost a listener.
Okay, so while I said that,
Wait, Tom. Barbieri just said, "Wow, love it."
sorry, Tom. But Randy, going back to your bike, I mean, you and I had this discussion. We found things in the top tube, the way it was cut.
Dude, the brake, the rear brake lever was held on by like two. It had become.
Yeah, I mean,
Not related to your fit, so
yeah.
Yeah.
So this isn't fit related
and it's-
necessarily, but
and it doesn't even need to be shop.
so let me take us down a different road because I want to have time to touch on this, Trent, because I think for the folks out there listening, it's like really interesting stuff. You've been to the tunnel a couple times.
I have
That's
You've-
the wind tunnel, right?
The
Yes,
wind tunnel.
Yeah, just not any tunnel.
Yeah, the tube in the
been in the
UK.
Eisenhower Tunnel too, but it was of no value. To me.
So you've been to the wind tunnel. You've been down there with Cobb, which has got to be
I
a
have.
pretty damn cool
I
experience.
Texas A&M University. Though.
Here we go again.
There's a lot of Aggies here, dude.
That's a good thing. That's a good thing.
Questions I have. So sorry, that flies. I get distracted pretty easy.
There's also a construction crew going on in the background. If people haven't
If
heard.
you hear
So,
if you're hearing a bunch of knocking around, they're expanding here because the store kicks ass. So that's what's going on. My question is, your findings from the tunnel. Big aero advantages, little things like some of the things you told me about the watch was pretty interesting.
Well, so what we did even at the tunnel is we wanted to learn why does the tunnel exist. You've got all these things like computational fluid dynamics, and you've got all of this. What we've more or less learned is marketing speak from brands about design for the wind tunnel and so on. And honestly, most brands are spending as much time in the wind tunnel as we did as a retailer, which ought to scare you a little bit. But they are using CFDs, and CFDs can be valuable. But the wind tunnel provides you with a real world, accurate assessment of the way that things compare against each other. But for us, most people will ask us, okay, so you found out which product is best. And if we found out which product was best, we would just carry that product. There would be no value in us carrying options. And as a result, that ought to tell you that there isn't a product that's best, whether you're talking wheels or anything else.
This is one of the reasons I brought this up, by the way, because you're going to talk about how on one person, one thing may be better than
Sure.
another. Yeah.
You know, and then it's so let's talk about even just positional aerodynamics. So one of the things that we tested, we did test some bike frames against each other, and we didn't really test to figure out which one was faster because a bike does more than just cut through the wind. It helps you climb a hill, it transfers power, it does all these things. It absorbs road noise that contribute to your performance and your experience on the bike. But we also tested people on those bikes, and when you're in the tunnel and you've got a bike, the bike has a shape, an aerodynamic shape. Well, then you take a person and you put them in the wind tunnel, and a person has an aerodynamic shape. When you put a person on a bike, you do not get a bike plus the bike's aero profile plus the person's aero profile. You have an entirely new shape, and
Right.
the air interacts with that new shape differently than it might have with the sum of the parts. So that's one. Number two, when you put a person in the tunnel, very small positional changes, a shrugging of the shoulders, a pitch of the head can have massive differences, especially when you're taking two products that are very, very close, like say two really good helmets, and how that will affect the aerodynamics of the person on the bike. So it becomes very difficult to control tests with a person on the bike in the wind tunnel. And if it becomes very difficult to control, you understand why Cervelo, for example, has their foam Dave Zabriskie that they put on bikes. But even then, if it's not a perfect fit with the bike that you have and it's not set up well, you're still not getting an apples to apples test. So what we learned is that doing real wind tunnel testing is real science, and real science is really hard because you get a lot of data, a lot of extraneous data, and it becomes very difficult to know whether or not things have been controlled adequately. let's say that you get data from, I don't know, AeroGeeks does a pretty good job if you follow their website, aerogeeks.com, of trying to control tests. But a lot of manufacturers will test a medium bike against a medium bike. But if you come into my shop and hear us talk bike fit at all, you know that a medium bike doesn't mean a whole lot. And one bike can be significantly bigger than the other one, even within the same brand. Let's talk road bikes. A Scott Solus in a 54 is much taller, meaning it has a much larger front surface area than a Scott Addict in a 54. So if you test those two bikes back to back, sure enough, the bike with the larger surface area is going to perform more slowly. So a brand benefits from a situation where their bike has a really small profile in terms of doing testing and comparing to other brands. So that's one. Number two, one of the things we went to the tunnel was to test the philosophies around aerodynamics, whether it's positional changes on the bike. When we say that we're going to take a fit like the one you likely got when you first got the bike, Randy, and put you into a position that we put you in, or even an aggressive position, what really is the benefit of those positional changes? You can assess the cost based on, how it feels or how things change, etc. But if we can't tell you what the benefit is, you can't make, as a rider and as an athlete, an educated cost benefit decision. And one of the things that we found was a fit that's very commonly seen in our shop and it comes from a lot of different places, from people that self-fit, from people that go to shops that don't really put a lot of time or energy into fitting them, that when we can typically give somebody somewhere in the 7 to 9 minute range of an improvement in 2 hours for a 70.3 riding at 20 miles an hour. And when you start talking about 7 to 9 minutes of improvement, if you're riding at a 4 hour bike split, it's not a huge gain. But if you're riding a 2:35 bike split, suddenly we've made you a significant amount of money, so to speak. We've improved your success and your performance more than a coach and you and all manner of power workouts are going to in a year and a half, 2 years. So
it's cheaper than a set of wheels too.
It's a lot cheaper than a set of wheels. So when you see all of the stuff online about the fastest ways or the cheapest ways to get fast, bike fit is always one of those ways. But we've had situations where people have come in and had really good fits. And as a result of having a really good fit, well, I don't know if I'm going to be able to give you any performance improvement at all, at least in terms of aerodynamics. But if you're not comfortable and you can't sustain that position, and we put you in a position or make even a few subtle changes that do allow you to sustain that position, then you get big effects. But even then, so let's say that you can't sustain the position. When you're sitting up on your bullhorns, the data that we found is the difference between you and a Ironman conservative TriShop aero position and you being up on the bullhorns is more than an hour in an Ironman. So more than 30 minutes in a 70.3. So every minute that you're not in the aero bars is a minute that is not going towards you getting or having the best day that you can. So that's, again, back to where we mentioned comfort as a variable in the speed component of bike fit. So those are the types of things that we tested. But we also looked at some subtleties. Lauren Barnett went with us, and her position is pretty well dialed. But we wanted to look at a couple of things, whether it was head position and how it affected her, a few equipment changes, but then also trying to clean up the view of the bike from the front. So whether it's cable routing, straw positioning with her drinks, and one of the things that we tested was her with her Garmin on and without it. And sure enough, there was a real bona fide, maybe 30 to 40 gram change, which I want to say was, if I'm remembering correctly, 20 to 30 seconds of time in a 70.3 for her to wear her Garmin on the outside of her wrist. Well, took it off, that improves, but then she goes, but then I won't have my Garmin. Well, what do I do? And so we just simply turned the Garmin around, and she got, say, 2/3 of that. But some of the changes that we could make for Lauren weren't actually ideal if you're considering, her ability to have a good day, to actually go out and have a good race. Yes, we can try to make you carve through the wind as good as we can, but if you can't see where you're going, that's a problem. If it creates, let's say that it creates anxiety because now you can't see your power numbers because of the placement where your computer is. If that elevates her heart rate 5 beats, that's the difference between winning and maybe not even being on the podium. So in those cases, we were able to provide her with data that said, this is the benefit, the cost, now make a business decision. What's best for you? And she made some choices that were aerodynamically favorable, and she made other choices that were more about the logistical planning and execution of her race.
Awesome.
How
Okay.
much aero penalty do you have moving your arms out just a little bit?
You know, that's something that we didn't test with specifics. Make no mistake, the narrower that you are, the smaller the surface area that you're presenting to the oncoming wind. But we find that a narrow arm pad position is usually a significant limiter for the age group being able to sustain arrow. So we let the athlete decide for themselves and tell them that their position in terms of the width of their arm pads is self-selected. One of the things that I fear, and we've actually inquired about getting it, and it should be out here soon. I don't remember the name of it. There's a sensor that you can place under the arm pads that tells you how long you're spinning an arrow. A lot of people will come in and we'll ask them how long they spin an arrow. Oh, I'm down there 99% of the time, and it's not true. Their pros aren't down 99% of the time. Well, every time I see them on TV, they're an arrow. Well, yeah, because you never get to see them when they're going to the bathroom or when they're eating the banana through through the feed zone and so on.
Yes, you have to go to the bathroom during Ironman races.
Sometimes you do.
Sometimes you don't even have to get out of the saddle to do it. It's kind of awesome.
That phenomenon just makes me crazy. I cannot imagine someone actually going to the bathroom on their self.
I'll share a story that has nothing to do with aerodynamics.
I want to know if you guys have done that.
Have I what?
So-
Peed on
Have
the
you
bike?
peed on yourself? Have you peed on yourself on the bike?
One time.
So listen. So as a
But here, hang on 1 second. I can't walk and chew gum at the same time, so generally I stop.
Have you peed in your
One
wetsuit?
time. Oh, every time I get in the water.
Dude, I tried to pee in my wetsuit while I was doing a triathlon and I couldn't do it.
Well, you can't do it when you're swimming.
No, I can't do it when I'm swimming.
Nobody can do it when they're swimming. It's impossible. It's
That's
physically
not
impossible.
true. You
Great.
It's
can
like keeping
Hey.
your eyes open when you sneeze.
Fish-
Listen,
listen.
Great talk. Great talk.
No,
This is awesome.
fish do it.
Not in their wetsuits.
Hey, Randy, do you use toilet paper or do you use baby wipes? It's a great conversation. I don't need an answer. I don't need an answer.
So yeah, I was in Coeur d'Alene, and so I had to drink a lot of water because I sweat profusely, and I didn't have enough salt, and I had to pee 3 times on the bike. And during one of the laps, I was peeing, and someone was behind me.
Oops.
Yeah, and all I heard is, dude. And I looked back and I went, no drafting. I had to throw away that right shoe.
Oh my
Oh
goodness.
dear God. This
Well,
weekend, I'm
we
not
just
saying
had our
this.
first beer get spilled.
There's a
The glass did not break.
soldier down.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay.
Early,
No one died.
earlier on, Dave's better half fell out of her chair.
Did she?
She
Yes.
did. She sat down in a chair and just fell on her.
Oh shit! I didn't see that. I missed it.
She broke the chair.
She's
I think
100
Andre
and
actually pushed her down, but we're just gonna go. With
she's 100 and nothing pounds. I don't know how you. If I don't know how I'm upright right now, if she broke a chair.
it.
All right. What else do we have? For,
Okay, I
Trent,
got one
have
more. I
have
got a question about the arrow stuff.
Go ahead.
Okay. All right. So if I move my
Dear God.
if I move my arms out but then angle my hands closer together, is that better or worse, or does it make a difference?
It totally depends on the person.
Okay.
There are people that is a critical piece of their ability to be comfortable in the arrow position, but it's not like that with everybody. When we are fitting somebody for a new bike, for example, there's really every bike in the $2,000 to $3,000 range doesn't come immediately with arm pads that have rotational adjustment. In some cases, it's a $50 upgrade to a new arm pad. In other cases, it's we need to change out your extensions altogether. So when we're fitting for a new bike, we actually will try our best to make that person comfortable without having to make that rotational adjustment. Because the last thing that somebody that's come in with a budget and an idea in their head of what they wants to hear is oh, and you need to do this $300 upgrade because these bars that we don't want, that we're not going to swap out, that the manufacturers decided that you should be riding, aren't appropriate for you. That said, when you get someone where the issue is critical, you don't really have a choice, and you have to turn those arm pads, and we have to either make a bike choice that makes it easier to do that, or we have to communicate to that customer, here is an upgrade that is going to be a critical piece of your ability to be comfortable. Now, are you on a CDO1?
Yeah.
Okay, those ship with profile bars, and
Right.
the profile bars, the OEM bars are plastic. I guess not the arm pads, but the holder itself is plastic, and most of them have no rotational adjustment. The metal ones, they do. You can rotate them all day long, and for us, it's It's about a $50 upgrade, but it's an easy one to make. And
Mm-hmm.
even with older bars, we'll sometimes upgrade them just because the pads are so much nicer and so much more comfortable.
Yeah, I'm gonna buy one today.
So it just depends, though.
I'm serious. I've
Oh,
got.
we got one.
No, they
I-
they
I
close
know
in.
this.
This guy, he's also going to buy a $9,000 bike.
No,
Mhm.
my
They-
wife.
$1,000 worth of wheels.
No, my wife is watching this right now,
Oh,
so please.
He's not.
No.
He's not buying these.
I have a crisp $100 bill that's going to be spent here today.
Allowance.
Wrapped around your Amex Black right now. I don't understand.
Hey,
I got the Capital One, bro.
So I have a question that I told Josh we would ask. So, question for Trent, and I'm gonna kind of edit this a little bit because it's long. So, Josh is a kind of a mechanically inclined guy. Okay, he's anal about the way his things are set up. Can he find formulas to do his own bike fit?
I had somebody actually come in and ask that question about a week and a half ago. Can you find formulas? Absolutely. Can you find formulas that are going to be better than a fitter? Not even close. And it's because as a fitter, I don't work off of formulas either. I work off of, and I'm a by the numbers fitter, and I'm not really ashamed to say that, in that I do expect the body angles that you're riding in to conform to that orthodoxy that I mentioned earlier or be within that range. But all of the body angles have to do with, how you ride, the style that you ride in, where you sit on the saddle, and all of the online fit calculators don't take any of those things into account. Are they better than you having, your dog bark if it looks good and stay silent if it doesn't? Of course, it just depends on what you're comparing it to. But a lot of those, we call it static fits. The Le Mans formula for saddle height, etc., are significantly inferior to having an expert eye and an accurate measurement of what you're doing on the bike. I mentioned earlier about saddles. You'll notice that saddle height isn't determined by, well, if you're on an ISM saddle, do this, and if you're on a Selle Italia, do this. They're going to have the same saddle height. But the truth is you sit sometimes 4 or even 5 centimeters fore or aft, so 2 inches almost fore or aft, depending on which saddle you're on. And that brings you closer to the pedals, or that pushes you further away from the pedals. That changes how you interact with the pedals. That changes, how your knees move through the pedal stroke. All of those things can't be accounted for in a, by the numbers measured fit. But in lieu of any better options, absolutely, you want to do that every day and twice on Sunday.
How many
Okay.
fits do you think you've performed over your career?
He
It's
knows.
easier to count by the rider. Probably over 1,000 riders.
Yeah.
Some of those riders have done 4 fits, some have done 1.
How many? So, how long do you think it takes a guy or a gal person to become proficient at fitting?
It really depends. I look at fits that I did 2 years ago and go, what were you thinking? And I'm sure that I'll do that 2 years from now about what fits that I'm doing today. What are you thinking?
But
That's not a good sales tactic, by the way. You may want to
no, but
temper that a little bit.
we're our own worst critic, though, too.
Well, and even still, one of the things that we see that really is frustrating, and this is kind of how, and there's some good of this and there's some bad of this. You see a lot of shops taking fit seriously in that they're investing in a lot of tools, but they've bought all these tools, sometimes spending tens of thousands of dollars, but they still don't know how to use those tools effectively. That's why you still see bikes set up inappropriately coming out of shops that have all these tools, or even have gone to some of these schools. It's like saying, how quickly can you get to some destination? Well, if you go the direct route, it can take you, we can have somebody that's a good fitter fitting better than a lot of shops in 25 fits. But, to be really good at it, you've got to see a wide range of athletes, and that's going to depend on who walks in the door, what type of problems that you face dealing with athletes. There are some athletes that I'm convinced that I could put them in whatever position, they're going to tell me I did great. And there are others that it doesn't matter what I do, it's never going to be good enough. But then they can go see John Cobb, and magically what he does is great because, well, he's John Cobb. And that's all fine and dandy. There's nothing wrong with that. So I don't think I have a good answer for you. I can tell you for us, when, we've got 2 other fitters in addition to myself here, and both of them have extensive riding experience, more than me. Both of them have a good understanding of human physiology, one from more of a performance coaching perspective, another one from a more scholastic perspective. But what makes fit hard is the ability to see second and third order effects from changes that you make. When you change the saddle height, that also changes the saddle fore aft. When you change the cleat position, that also changes how far the person reaches for the pedals from the seat, and so on and so forth. And if you change saddle height and it changes fore aft, and that sometimes can change where the arm pads need to be or where the handlebars need to be. And then you've got all the equipment limitations. What can the vision bars do that profile designs can't? How do you unravel the mystery that is a Trek Speed concept handlebar set, and the new 9.9, and versus one of the older models that has a more traditional bar set. And the type of experience that you get is more important than how much experience you get. But even then, if you don't have a good basis for understanding, it doesn't matter how many times you swing a hammer. If you swing it wrong 100 times, you're still going to be terrible at swinging a hammer. But if you swing it right 100 times, even if the first 99 times weren't the smoothest things in the world, you're going to eventually get pretty good at it.
That was a good answer.
Yes. All right. So we have about 10 minutes left here before the store closes, and we got to let Trent get home to Miss Jennifer Nix, his wife, who hasn't seen him all day. So let's do this. Two things. First of all, Trent has done an unbelievable job of helping me solve for this fiasco that I did with my bike.
Have you made a
weeks ago.
decision?
We have made a decision.
Was it collective?
I do a Trent, and he'll tell you.
Is there a committee involved?
No, Trent will tell you.
He told you what bike
The answer for me is always Trent. I just do what you tell me to do, man, when it comes to this stuff. So we're doing the Scott, right?
So yeah, we're gonna look at the Plasma Premium.
Nice.
Dave's got one of the reasons that we went with the Guru when we did the first thing, when he says, do whatever Trent says, you'll actually, if he tells the truth, I don't work like that. And actually, I've had customers that have gotten very irritated with me because I present the data and make them make a decision.
Andre's over there nodding. Yes. You won't just tell me what to do.
I won't just tell you what to do. I hate it when somebody does that to me. Even if they're right, I teach a man to fish, and he'll be able to feed himself forever type thing. But it's also one of those things when people are spending and trusting you with a lot of money, then you need to make sure you get it right. But there's a lot of things about bikes and bike fit and so on that most riders just want to ride, feel good, and go fast. And you can do that on a lot of bikes. So when I tell you that X is going to be superior to Y, it needs to really be so. And a lot of people can't discern that. So they need to be comfortable with the purchase that they make as well. But Dave needed a lot of pitch in his arm. So he sits on an ISM. You should still sit on an ISM, don't you?
Yes.
Okay, the ISMs, the way they're set up.
Because Trent told you to.
Right, yeah. Nobody's ever done what I told them on a saddle. I can tell you that. They chose for themselves. Because your body does a lot of choosing for you.
That's true. But D's nuts is your friend.
No, I'm convinced of that.
For sure.
Yeah.
The way that I tell people, they'll come in and saddle hurts. Are you using chamois butter? No. I said, God put it here for us. Why are you to deny divine, intervention?
I didn't even know about it until I was riding with Terry in Austin. He's like, "Hey, have you ever tried this?" I'm like, "No." I
Yeah.
had no idea it even existed.
Try this. It's magic.
I was like, I'm not putting that
Smear
stuff.
this all over your crotch.
I thought he was literally, I thought he was joking.
Dude.
He goes, "D's nuts." I'm like,
yeah, I
what?
don't think I'm going to take anything
No.
from Terry that he says smear all over my
Trust me, I was skeptical.
Yeah.
So he needs, though, pitch in his arm pads in terms of when you set up an ISM, a lot of people slide off the front of it. So one of the tricks that we'll do is we'll angle bars up to create friction at the arm pad so that it can kind of push back without having to work to do so. And that's something that Dave struggled with for a long time. But at the same time, Dave is much more Ironman fit. He's never going to be a little guy, but he's much more Ironman fit than he was 2 years ago when he was on that speed concept. But it's also one of the things why it's an expensive bike. We're going to try it because when you start getting into, and I think this is something we haven't discussed yet, super bikes, a lot of super bikes take away adjustability to maximize performance and aerodynamics. And one of the things that both the Scott and the Phelps, two of the options that he told me were something that he was interested in, is with the integrated handlebar setups, you do not have the option of doing an arm pad pitch. So we're going to try it. get them on, see how it goes. They have nice profile bars that you can still make a nice width adjustment and rotational adjustment, and we'll see if it works. And if it doesn't, then we'll find something that's better.
Dave, I just want you to note that those were also the 2 bikes that I picked out for you.
They were. You put them
Yeah.
on the page, and I mostly ignored everybody's comments, and I didn't actually. Can't get a felt for a while, and honestly, that's it's as good a bike as I can get right away. I've liked the bike for a very long time. We actually talked about the Scott before we bought the Guru, but the Scotts weren't quite here yet. So it's timing, and it's the right choice. And like Trent said, he's going to put me on it, try it out. If it doesn't work, I guess we're going to go try to go another direction.
I love my Scott, and I've had it for a few years now, so it's actually time for me to upgrade.
That makes me not want to ride it.
Hopefully, Leanne's not listening. But
Didn't you just get a bike?
I did.
A board?
Here at TriShop, in Boardman, right over there.
All right, so a few more minutes left. Anybody have questions in the audience? We're live here today,
We
so
actually have an audience. We're very impressed. Thank you for being here. Yay!
There's- yeah, they're probably, some of them are probably a little tipsy right now.
There's actually a
But-
dog in the audience
We
too.
have a dog.
sure.
Yeah, that's
and
big time.
and I love the fact that the dog is had his
Paying
butt,
zero attention.
has
to
his
us.
butt to us.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Ooh,
Yeah,
James
what's your-
Hardy has a
what's your question,
Please come on
James?
down.
Do I position
Yes,
myself
right there,
like
right
this?
there. You're good.
Put your mouth like
Right.
close.
Close to
Bam.
They can't see you, but you're good. Ask the question. They can hear you.
Excellent. So, whenever I was purchasing aero bars for my bike, I noticed that there was about 11,000 different shapes and configurations for them. Are there any benefits versus a ski bend versus an S bend, or does it really go down to the individual athlete and their comfort?
That's a good question, and it's a question that we see quite a bit. I will tell you that first things first, most people are going to have a preference. What I tell people is I just simply do not want them holding onto the bars with any effort. Now, you can actually generate a little more power by pulling yourself through the aero bars, but when you're doing especially a long course, that comes at a cost. You're burning calories doing something other than what helps propel you forward, which is pedaling the bike. So I want you relaxed. Some people, they find that if they get an S bend, they torque their wrist and they grab on and it causes wrist discomfort and hand discomfort. Others find that the ski bends require them to reach too far to shift, so they prefer an S bend. We err on the side of rider preference, and if the rider doesn't have a preference, we typically push them to ski bends if we can.
Who else?
And Marie's just wondering when the chocolate cake's gonna get here. So
We don't have any. I don't need any cake.
So you guys mentioned superbikes earlier.
Yeah,
What
we
are
were talking
your
about
questions
superbikes. Well, actually, so this got started because a person we all know on the Facebook had purchased a super bike, and just looking at it was just, I mean, you could just look at the bike and see that the seat was below the stem the stem, and the whole thing was set up.
Was it the Scott?
No, but when we looked at it, it was just like, so I made a comment saying, hey, that's a really nice bike. I guess you didn't want to be in aerodynamic position, or how does that work? And I got
Such a smart ass.
So
I got flamed on it because like,
So-
just say nice bike and shut up.
So what kind of bike was it? I mean, just the brand.
I don't even remember it now.
So number one, an expensive bike is not a super bike, and it's not that the bike isn't super. It's just that we consider a super bike a bike that has an integrated cockpit, integrated air bar, integrated stem system, something that doesn't have the traditional range of adjustability of what you have on a traditional steer tube and stem based bike.
Gotcha.
So when we talk about stack and reach, we talk about stack and reach of the frame set. But if you have, let's say, a felt IA, which is something we sell, and we've sold quite a few of those guys. When you have a felt IA, the distance between the head tube top, so the frame termination point, and the arm pad is not the same as it is on, let's say, the felt B series bike. It has a traditional -7, -8 degree pitch stem, headset top cap, and bar set. So it becomes really difficult when you're buying a super bike to completely go off of frame, stack, and reach to make that purchase decision. There are some bikes, like we carry the Boardman TTE, that if you measure it, it's really, really close. The arm pad position on the TTE versus what ships standard on their TT, which is a very similar frame, but it's got an exposed steer tube. So from there, we use stack and reach, where we use the arm pad stack and reach. And you'll notice a lot of superbike manufacturers will provide a table that shows the range of adjustability of the pads on their bike. Now, that said, there are some bikes that when we say there's a range of adjustability, just because a bike can go to that position doesn't mean it should. We see that, we used to sell an Argon 18, and the E118 is a really nice looking bike. It's a really stiff bike. It's middle of the road aerodynamically, but really light. It's got a lot of great qualities, but you can flip those bars up or you can flip them down. And it's been our opinion, others disagree, that if you flip those bars up, then that bike is too small for you. That you actually should be setting that bike up in the same manner that Argon 18 has set up every one of their professionals, every one of their elite riders, and in every picture on their website. I've never seen them publish a picture of the bars flanged up. So it's an example of a bike that can go to a place that doesn't necessarily mean that the rider is going to get any benefit from that.
I have another question.
Okay.
Clip-on aero bars on a road bike. Discuss.
So we have people that will come in sometimes and ask us to fit them onto clip-on road bars on a road bike. And truth is, what they're asking is borderline impossible. Sometimes it's, hey, we're going to bring a forward seat post in and we're going to put you on a saddle like this. And make no mistake, we've had some success doing that in some extreme cases, a steep seat post angle plus a forward seat post plus all these different things. And strong riders can ride in a situation like that in a very useful way. Tom Zerbel rode the TT Nationals a couple of years ago on an Orbea Orca road bike with TT bars on it, and he won. And the Orca road bike is not the old Orca. The new one's better. But the old Orca was not an aero champion. It wasn't at the top of the list. It wasn't at the level of a Felt AR or a Boardman TT or a Boardman Air or even like the new Scott Foil. Excellent aerodynamic tube shapes, excellent aerodynamics for a road bike. So the difference between the bikes is enough that he was able to overcome whatever deficiencies that bike provided. But when you're on a road bike and you have a road geometry, meaning that the seat post is further back than a triathlon bike, to put you in a suitable aero position, you are like a clamshell. You're just completely doubled over. And a lot of people, that becomes a very difficult position to sustain. So when we have someone that comes in with aero bars on a road bike, and let's say that they're going to do a 70.3, they're signed up for it 3 weeks from now, budget doesn't support doing anything else, no problem. We put those bars on, we set it up like a road bike, we put those bars on, we give them a place to rest, a place that does allow them to hide from the wind a little bit, but with the expectation that they will never be able to sustain that position for a long period of time. So that's kind of the, aero bars on a road bike. Yeah, there are some benefits from it, but it's we see this even with some bikes. Specialized came out with one, and I think that it's already gone. I don't know their line really, really well. I know their trial bikes pretty well because I fit a few of them. But they have a bike that they claimed was a versatile bike. You could flip the seat post one way, and it was a road bike, and flip it the other way, and it was a trial bike. And to me, that was the Swiss Army knife argument. Oh, look, it's a screwdriver and it's a knife. No, it's a terrible screwdriver and it's a terrible knife. But it's certainly better than twisting screws with your fingers. It's certainly better than trying to chop something up with the side of your hand. And that's the way a lot of those versatile bikes are, in my opinion.
I have a question from the folks watching on YouTube, and there are some people watching, which is pretty awesome. Asked, Trent, did you see the article about aero testing in the Velodrome? Any thoughts on starting up aero testing at the Frisco Velodrome?
That's a good question. I'm not surprised that came from Tom. No, because the velo's outside. So what they're doing with aero testing the Velodrome is they're at LA in a closed environment where there is a windless environment, and they're having people ride, and they're capturing power data as they ride, and through some algorithmic analysis, they're having people ride, make changes to their clothes or their helmet and so on. And depending on how fast you ride and the power output that you did, if they can control those two variables, the only other variable in the mix in terms of performance is going to be aerodynamics. So they can make aerodynamic assessments of position change, of clothes wear, and so on. You can't control that effectively at the Velo. The other thing is getting triathletes to ride effectively at the Velo, even in the flats. You're going to find that they're going to really, really struggle to hit those turns because even though the turn is pretty wide, they're not used to turning at all. So I think you're going to find that it's not an ideal place to test. But even then, like I mentioned about the wind tunnel, I can take you to the wind tunnel And depending on your head position, one run versus another, it can totally pollute an entire line of data. So it's very difficult to really make an accurate assessment about, well, which helmet is faster. Well, in our data, we showed trends that showed a certain helmet was faster than most of the others. But one of the things we can conclusively say is that a good aero helmet was better than a, middle of the road road helmet every day.
Right.
Same thing with certain wheels. There were certain wheels that did very well in a zero yaw, so that's straight on wind, which is a condition you will only experience in Texas, at least, on in a velodrome that's closed up or on your trainer. And then there were other wheels that performed really well the worse the wind got in terms of the side wind. Well, the faster you ride, the more it pulls the yaw forward. So you can reasonably say that this wheel is better for people that ride less than 20 miles an hour when they ride, and this wheel becomes better for people that ride more than 20 miles an hour. So if you ride 25, you can have a 20-degree side wind, and it's pulled the yaw way forward compared to somebody that's riding 16, 17 miles an hour.
Thank you, Trent. All right, so this place is closed. It's time for you to go home. So
I thought we were going to go into the Iran nuclear
no,
armament.
no. Although I did accuse Randy of being an ISIS today.
It's because chemtrails.
Yeah. So, Trent,
I lied.
I will. First of all, thanks, man.
Yeah,
I really
thank you.
Appreciate
Thanks
it.
for letting us come into your shop and tear
And-
it up.
and the,
bring bottles, and bring in dogs, and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, man, we really appreciate it. I'm like Norm from Cheers in this place, and if you don't understand that reference, then
You're-
go look at
and
YouTube.
you're Anne-Marie.
Go look at YouTube and search for Cheers. Thanks a lot, man. I'll put the location for TriShop in the show notes. If you've got questions for Trent,
Yeah, just email me at trent@trishop.com.
there you go. Do that. And if you're ever in town, come by and see the guy and his crew, because they are the best in town. Got a really friendly staff up here and lots of cool stuff to buy.
The only
So,
triathlon specific store in the Metroplex.
agreed. I hope everybody liked the live show. I understand there are wrinkles. This is we just kind of threw the spaghetti up against the wall and it stuck. And we're going to keep doing this, and we'll figure out all the little issues and get them fixed and keep moving forward. We really appreciate you guys' support. And we are going to holler at you next week with Gene from Charity Miles, the CEO of Charity Miles. If you guys haven't ever heard of Charity Miles, please go to charitymiles.org. Check that out. If you've got questions that you'd like for us to ask Gene, let me know that, and we will get that. We will get you some questions answered there. It's a really cool app for the iPhone, for the Android, and you could raise money for awesome causes, running and biking, and it doesn't cost you a penny.
And one more thing.
Fire away.
We actually just confirmed Meredith Kessler for the following week.
Meredith
Yes,
Kessler.
Ironman champion Meredith Kessler, and in my opinion, the best damn American triathlete we have. She does ride a Boardman, Trent.
I hear
Yes.
those are
Not,
really,
not that I
really,
keep track of anything like that.
I hear those are really nice bikes.
Yeah, we're gonna have Meredith on the 11th of August. We're gonna do that via Skype. She's out west. She's in San Francisco area, so we
Trevor's
won't.
gonna fly her in for us.
Yeah, he
I
lost.
decided to build out instead.
Yeah, he lost Randy's Black Amex, so he couldn't do it. Anyway, so yeah, Meredith Kessler, who is going to be an awesome guest for us. So look forward to that.
Hey, don't forget, by the time this goes up, there's only a couple days left for the Octane special at recoverypump.com.
Yeah.
Type in Octane, get 10% off. We have had a few people take advantage of it.
Yeah, pretty great. All right, guys, we're going to tune out here, and we will holler at you very soon. Bye.
Bye, Inter Google Webs.